Sorry for the slight delay there between rounds. One of the players, just fell asleep or something. We don't really know for sure. But here is Sottle to almost certainly explain the situation better than I can.
I haven't done that in so long. Apologies, I was muted there for a second. But yeah, the important thing is that Bunnyhoppor is here, ready and raring to go for his huge semi-final now up against Leta, playing for the right to take on Alatemu in the finals. When either way, it's going to be a very fitting conclusion to what has been an incredibly stacked top 8, an incredibly stacked tournament throughout now.
Yeah, and I'm happy for Morning Stars as well. I was just reading back through some old research I did when Bunny was on Morning Stars during the World Championships. And they were like, yeah, our main player is Bunnyhoppor, but we're trying to encourage young Italian players in all esports games to get somewhere. So we've got Meliador and Leta in our team as well. And here we are 2 years later, and that academy idea has just brought the man against the previous star player for a chance to get to the final.
Yeah, for sure. And just looking at the way these lineups break down, Bunnyhoppor is going to have his warrior banned, as has been the case for most of the tournament, I would imagine. And Rogue going down on the other side from Leta, which leaves Bunnyhoppor with the Warlock, Hunter, and Rogue up against Warrior, Demon Hunter, Hunter on the other side. And I think Bunnyhoppor has looked very, very comfortable with all of these decks up until this point. The Hunter in particular, I think, is a very Bunnyhoppor deck in that a lot of people will tend to autopilot a little bit while playing Highlander Hunter because it feels like, in all honesty, the kind of deck that you can do that with. But there's been a lot of talk. I think you might have brought it up, the idea of there aren't many important decisions, but you better get them right because if you don't, you will lose the game immediately. Bunny is exactly the kind of player who is going to be hyper attentive every single turn and make sure, even with Highlander Hunter, where it's fairly often a case of just playing your largest minion on curve, that he spots every single time that isn't the case. And I think he's been putting on a bit of an exhibition so far.
Yeah, those cases tend to be where actually this card isn't being played until turn 8. So that remove it from your hand and think how the game now looks. It's sometimes completely different. Like you say, Bunnyhoppor, the ultimate for that sort of thing. But I wonder what Leta has learned from him back in the day and whether he can get this one done. Plus, Leta had the ultimate idea for this tournament. I don't believe anyone else did it. He named his decks Tour Eiffel, Tres Bien, Wee Wee, and Baguette.
No, wait, that was him.
Yeah.
I had not put that together. Yeah, okay, so I saw that tweet before the tournament even started. Did not register that this was now the player who went 8-1 through Swiss and now finds himself in a semi-final. Wow. The pro-France conspiracy goes all the way to the top, Lorinda. That's what I'm learning here.
Yeah, very much so. So he's now got the French support and the Italian support on his side. And I think that's the two biggest support groups we've had over the last few months. So
amazing.
I imagine it's all kicking off in chat right now. But there is a game of Hearthstone about to take place, so maybe we should have a look at that.
Yes, indeed, and it is going to be the Hunter coming out here from Bunnyhoppor. Classically, this was one of the matchups that was stopping Hunter from being quite the dominant force that we've seen it being in this tournament, and certainly on ladder. Legend ladder right now is just infested with Highlander Hunters because of the nerf to Demon Hunter, meaning that Hunter has gained some points in this matchup in places, depending on build, but most importantly, there just isn't as much Demon Hunter around as there was before, which means Highlander Hunter can just really come out to play. But minions like that Goblin Orc Merchant is going to be pretty effective, I think, in picking up early game value trades, just making annoying minions that can't be removed, because currently there is no Desert Spear in the hand for Bunnyhoppor, which can end up being a key card in the matchup.
Yeah, one of the problems that Hunter can have against Demon Hunter, even with Desert Spear and weapons, is you do have to trade into the minion with your face if you're using a weapon, and the amount of damage that Demon Hunter can still output very rapidly can soon lead to that actually being a problem, even if they've killed all of your minions. It's not like Warrior where they can hero power and gain 6 armor back and then cheat with an armor smith and get 10 more. That damage is permanent.
Yeah, the really tricky thing, though, is that is also true on the other side. Demon Hunter removal really comes from just smashing minions with face as well. So Hunter can often be in the position where that is leveraged and, King Crush can just come down nice and early and be threatening lethal. So it really does change very quickly from a fight for board control to just a straight-up race in this matchup in a lot of occasions.
And Kane, a good thing to have if you're racing a Hunter, because they do have this irritating Bone Wraith that is just so annoying to get through if you're a Demon Hunter player. Not much else is really that annoying early on, but yeah, the Bone Wraith is. Desert Spear would be, as you just mentioned, particularly horrible here. That it is going to get into this Vulpera turn pretty much intact.
He is, but this is actually already a really tricky turn for Bunny. Coin Zixor here is obviously the best play he can make on board, but it potentially leaves his following turn a bit stranded if he doesn't get a better Corrosive Breath target than the one he got this turn. And because of the Umberwing being drawn here from Leta, he's not going to have that, which means Bunnyhoppor needs to either naturally draw or trap into something impactful to do this turn.
Yeah, Leta could also have done with not playing that turn quite so quickly. There was no other play. It was completely straightforward, but Bunnyhoppor could do this to people. Sort of like the anti-Casey. He makes you play too quickly for totally different reasons.
That is an interesting option off the top for Bunnyhoppor. Like I said, he had a pretty dead-looking turn here.
Yeah, you were saying that he was absolutely needed a pickup. Well, that is a pickup, but it might be better used much later on. This is one of those situations we were talking about before the game where this decision is really important right now. We're going to see the effects of whatever he chooses to do here ripple throughout the rest of this game.
Yeah, for sure. And even this in itself, Bunny will often take his time over decisions that do look fairly obvious to most people, but I actually do not think this is an obvious choice whatsoever. You just have to look at the current board state to know how effective Unleash the Hounds might be in this scenario, but giving up your Dino Tamer Bran, I talked about that, the ability to use Dino Tamer Bran as a racing tool in the later game, because as you see, the only way these minions get removed is Leta throwing his face into them as the Demon Hunter. So now, with the Bunnyhoppor Brawler coming down, suddenly Unleash the Hounds is looking a little bit sketchy. That's to Zephyrus off the top, though.
Zephyrus off the top, but no fun to be had with it, really. Like, if you use it now to get any sort of board here, you're so done on the next turn.
Agreed. Certainly, default play is just the curve play, which is Bone Wraith. Even if the Bone Chewer Brawler, value trades through it and gets enraged, it then plays nicely into your Unleash the Hounds or even Zephyrus options on the following turn.
I wonder.
Just looking, you can't afford to pass. That was something that just briefly crossed my mind. But 6 is just too much to take.
Yeah, struggle to see the other options.
And with 6 being too much to take, there's a very strong case for just caning this up. 10 damage to face available. You've got to be sure, though, that your cane doesn't die, otherwise you set yourself back. That is the problem here.
It is indeed, yeah. And that's where I think we saw early on Maevs being used in a fair few decks in situations like this, but coincidentally we've seen less and less of Maev as the tournament has gone on and we've started following the successful players. I wonder why that might be. And it turns out that, just playing an understated minion and then leaving yourself in a position where you still have to deal with the minion later isn't really that effective, because the whole idea of, you think of it like Sap in Rogue, right? Like, Sap is an effective card because you can play it so cheaply and then get further ahead on board. Therefore, when the minion comes back, you're in a better position to deal with it. That's not the case with a Maev or with a Kane Go Face there in that situation, because you've spent your mana inefficiently. You've played inefficient stats for what you've played, so you're not pulling further ahead on board, so you're going to end up back in a worse position later down the line when you do have to deal with the minion. So with all that rant out of the way, basically what I'm trying to say is I really respect this trend from Leta, using the Kane even though he could have ignored it.
Yeah, and that was the quality part of it, is to recognise that he doesn't have to use Kane's ability. He is allowed to use it just as a trading tool. My brain tends to default to, okay, I'm not going to Kane the face because all the things you just talked about with Maeve, but I'll probably play the Mana Saber because I don't want to waste the Kane's ability. But Leta, being good at Hearthstone, actually just to clear out the board and get himself this lovely board state now, which is him having the tempo going into turn 6.
Yeah, for sure. Bunny is down a power card here, though, with the Dinotamer Bran being discarded to the tracking. Always got to keep that in mind because it does just frame the context of the whole matchup very, very differently. Of course, Leta won't know that, which is really crucial as well, because it's something that you are fearful of, is that how much damage you do end up taking while fighting for boars just by putting your face into their minions over and over again. And you, as the Demon Hunter, are always fearful of that Dinotamer Bran or that Zephyrus coming down to end the game with burst damage. Leta only has to deal with half of those options now, but the Zephyrus is still in hand for Bunnyhoppor, which, having now preserved it to the point where he can now just perhaps start curving out with his own chunky mid-range minions, he might be able to hold on to it for a later game position where it can be more of a blowout.
And how do you feel about this situation? I don't like taking mystery choice. I know people who think you use mystery choice a lot, Gallon being one of them. You mystery choice. If you're going to get Twin Slice with Altruist in your hand, you mystery choice every time. But I'm always for taking the best one that I can see. It tends to be better than a random one.
I tend to mystery choice quite a lot as well. I think, yes, I definitely get the theory of, the best out of 3 options that you see is on average going to be better than just one choice completely at random. However, you tend to take it, based on current board states, or at least trying to predict future board states, right? And you're kind of falling into your own human fallibility at that point, into which of the weird cards you think is going to be good. Generally the cards that you don't want to pick are bad because they're situational and weird, and you can never quite, I think, engineer a situation where you're certain one of them is going to be good. So for me, mystery choice for one of the cards that you play in the deck, for example, is a choice that I take pretty often.
That does make sense, unfortunately. As does this Shadow Madness option. Clearing up with decent stuff to follow up in hand. It's weird to see these two decks so low on resources so early on. Oh, Leta with the meta.
That is a big one.
So the main part of this turn is working out whether you're ever going to use Altruist for anything.
I grow impatient.
Why is that the main part of this turn?
Well, because your instinct is to play meta, Twin Slice down the Zephyrus, and then you're in a great spot. But you end up using a Twin Slice, you don't have much Altruist power, so you want to go to the Mana Saber if you want to protect the Altruist, and go this way, and then do it all next turn, and actually leave up Zephyrus for one turn completely.
I'm confused why that was your instinct. Why do you lean towards wanting to play the Metamorphosis there instead of playing a minion? Isn't minion first better and then back that up with damage?
To get it established on a turn where 5 mana isn't so much of an issue. If you draw something good now, like a Skull, then you've got 5 mana just not usable.
Okay.
I wonder.
Sure.
And also, you might win in 2 turns if you set it up immediately.
Yeah, I think that's fairly unlikely, though.
I mean, it only shoots for like 1.3 damage or something now instead of 5. I don't know.
Yeah, right.
So that messes with my instincts a little bit.
Yeah.
But Altruist Twin Slice is like 6 damage on its own. Meta setup already, and having shot, that's another 4, another 8, that's 14. You're not far off at that point. That's why that's my instinct.
But crucially, you are off. And I do really like this minion play, and I like... you were also talking about potentially twin slicing the Zephyrus if you were going to, but also I don't think you have to do that just because of how clean the Altruist twin slice setup is on the following turn, which will take care of that Zephyrus anyway. Oh, mama.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I definitely
some
wouldn't
damage.
twin slice if I don't meta. Like, you're playing the all-in play or you're not. And this is just game, basically. It might not actually be lethal, but I don't care because it's the end of the game.
But I don't care. Love it. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. The 1 extra mana from the attack on the hero power, I believe, makes it Xaxes. You go through? No, he's still slightly off. Okay, miscounted.
But he's got meta to face next turn, and he's not taking 12 from hand. And Leta has looked good this tournament as well. Like, he's a player who's had good results without having spectacular ones, just constantly up in these 7-2s and 6-3s. But he's looked pretty tidy from what we've seen.
Yeah, and we were talking about how, potentially a visit to the final here, so if he wins this game, he could, go second place overall in Masters Tour wins? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, we think second place overall, level with Hunter Ace. Bunnyhoppor is actually like one behind him as well. But those four players, if you count Dead Draw, are just constant themes in Masters Tours.
Well, pick your poison. Leta goes with the had it all along, and it is, as Neil said, Leta with the meta to end game number 1 and get himself one step closer to what will be one giant leap towards becoming a Grandmaster for the coming seasons, because winning tournaments is very, very hard to overcome for any of the other players that are trying to be the pursuing pack. If you get that big 32,000 plus under your belt from a tournament win, that is very, very hard to be caught up by some of the other players.
Yeah, and at this point, I normally ask you the question about semi-finals and do you get more nervous as you go along. But I think in this instance, it's not a free roll. He's not just happily free rolling through a big tournament, and if he wins it, that's great. This is, if you win this tournament, you're a Grandmaster, most likely, because he's picked up so much other bits and pieces. So I don't think I even need to ask you, do you get more nervous as you go along here?
Yeah, I think in this case, because the stakes are so different, I think he will probably be feeling some nerves. Personally, from my experience, like the first major where I qualified sort of out of groups, the quarterfinal, the first game out of groups was the game I felt the most nervous about, because that's the one where a little bit of imposter syndrome can kick in. You're like, okay, do I actually belong here amongst all of these other names that are, made top 8 at this tournament? Then once I'd won one game and was going through to the semifinals, that's when the nerves were gone completely. So I was like, okay, I've made my point from this point. That was just, playing for prize money in a regular major, though. When there's, career implications on the line with, becoming a Grandmasters, I imagine that is completely reversed. And the closer and closer that you get to that point, the more and more the nerves will pile on.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how much he has picked up in the first 3 events, but coming second might be okay for him as well. But that big first place should be enough to give him a very strong... We can't talk in absolutes because there's still 2 more tournaments to go, and it's not the main focus, but he's going to be... It is for him, right? This is his main focus, is becoming Grandmaster from here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the goal of the majority of the players who are going through the Masters Tour qualifiers, playing those week after week, day after day, trying to grind through, getting those 5 top 8s, getting those victories, whatever they need to get there, hour after hour of grinding ladder qualifiers to even get to the point where you're qualified for this tournament, which I think is something that goes understated, is just how well anyone's done to even be invited to this tournament. There's 324 players in this tournament out of thousands upon thousands that tried to get here in the first. To even be able to get to this tournament in the first place is an achievement. To then narrow down from that field to one of the top 8 is insane. To then narrow that down even further to be the highest prize earner in your entire region and become a Grandmaster and potentially set yourself up for a career is insanity.
Yeah, and I think because we say it sort of quickly and in passing, sometimes when we're talking percentages, you lose the humanity of, oh yeah, they played 73 qualifiers. 70 what? 73 days of qualifiers, basically. Like, it's just numbers we throw out there, but these players are working so hard to get those qualifier wins and those top 8s required to get into these events.
Now, Leta, just 2 games away from a finals appearance, is going to turn to his Warrior, which is honestly in pretty good shape against most decks still. There's a lot of people hanging around saying, you know what, Warrior is still the deck. Nothing's changed. Meet the new boss, same as the old boss. Enraged Warrior is just still the way to go.
That's my belief. I've liked both the Warrior and the Demon Hunter previously, and I still think they're very good. Obviously, there's been some changes, but Warrior has lost a little bit in that you can't build it the meaty way with green skin anymore because you need the weapon swings. But you can still build it this way, which a lot of people will tell you is the best way anyway. And the little bit of damage you lose is fine. And until people start playing a lot of free health minions, everything's just going to be the same.
Yeah, you can't go the meaty way, so you have to just settle for some eggs instead, right?
Yeah. Brilliant.
Thank you.
Very good. Can we move on now?
Yes, certainly. After you.
this is obviously an incredibly good hand, and actually got more awkward to play with a pickup of Terran because it's now perfect in 2 different ways. Whereas before you just play the egg and hit people with it. Now the Terran actually makes it complicated for you.
It does, yeah. It's such a huge amount of tempo when you draw this opener, though. And there's also the Inner Rage outside of that as well, which potentially plays to a Bloodsworn Mercenary draw as well to completely blow out the game state. The saving grace here, though, could be the Zephyrus in hand for Bunnyhoppor, which he chose to forego on turn 2. Empty board Zephyrus. I think a lot of people would have just jammed it there and tried to tempo out, but Bunnyhoppor holding on, looking to be reactive instead.
Yeah, Zephyrus goes through phases depending how good at Hearthstone you are. Like, if you're totally new to Hearthstone, I think the instinct is, I want to Pyroblast. And then you get less and less greedy with your Zephyrus, just using it for more and more tempo. And then there comes a place where you get to this sort of situation where actually Bunny's aware he probably needs to be a little bit greedy with it. His opponent kept 2 cards.
Struggling a little with this pick. I'm very unsure.
The trouble is, the Fairy Dragon and Brightwing both just lose to weapons horribly, and the Evasive Worm isn't really good enough for a 6-drop against Warrior.
That is true.
Slow.
The Fairy Dragon can potentially be played on 5 if the Rotnest Drake is not an appealing option, which it's usually isn't against Warrior. So your curve from here could possibly be Evasive Feywing, then into Fairy Dragon plus Scale Rider on the following turn. Something along those lines. Fairy Dragon Kill Command being an option as well on that turn. So yeah, I think for maximum flexibility, Fairy Dragon is likely the way to go here. But having now seen the Terran, Bunny might feel like he has to divert off curve and start to stop some of the snowball here, because if he doesn't deal with this Terran immediately, for all Bunny knows, this could start getting copied on future turns.
Yeah, and this is the part where you're sitting there going, wasn't this deck nerfed? And actually, nothing's changed.
Yeah. I mean, huge swathes of the deck just function in exactly the same way, right? Like you said, you does cut out one particular win condition that did happen a not insignificant amount of the time, which was, just big buffed up weapons, pushing face damage, and then Korkron or Grom to end the game. That is a little bit worse than it used to be, but other than that, all of the degenerate things this deck can do are still very much intact.
They are, but you now have the option to fill your new decks, which no one had the time to build, with minions that have not got 2 health. You can now dodge the whole 3 attack live wire lancers and so on by having a slightly different build of the opposing decks. I wonder if that will evolve over time now.
Right. Wow! Misses out on the Zephyrus as well, has to end up with a Flame Imp instead, which now means that potential punish of copies of this Terran being able to come out could have been in Bunny's future.
Yeah, that would have just been...
Fortunately for him, it's not the case, but it's still just a whole additional egg inside that he's going to have to deal with that Bunny really wanted to take out of the equation that turn.
This is becoming an awkward person. And Titanic Lackey is the ultimate role there, I feel. I guess Kobold in this situation would be actually the ultimate role, but this is still a great pickup.
Right.
And I think that pause was, can I in a rage and rampage this and just start launching face?
Yeah, I was kind of looking at that too.
But because Bunny
does seem like the most responsible play, though.
No, there's just too much attack on the other side, but your little eyes light up as a warrior player anytime you have that combo in your hand.
Yep.
It gets there so often against so many unlikely board states.
Yeah, for anyone curious, by the way, you could potentially have predicted that you wouldn't see Earthshock in that scenario, because the way Zephyrus evaluates a Death Rattle, it can't actually read. So Zephyrus can't mouse over the card, see what it is, and then evaluate whether you need to silence it or not. So the way it evaluates is based on the stats of the minion versus the cost. So because Terran is an efficient minion on its own, 3 mana, 3/4, it thinks that its Death Rattle probably isn't that good, because it's a 3 mana, 3/4 to begin with. It's why, you'll see, Mechanical Whelp, you will always see silence get offered for that, because it's a 6 mana 2/2, so Zephyrus loses its mind and thinks that Death Rattle is the most important thing in the world.
So you're telling me that Zephyrus is Daruk? Just judges things on how overstated they are, and therefore
yes, yeah, exactly.
Battle Cries, Death Rattles appropriate.
But with Death Rattles instead of Battle Cries, exactly. Yeah.
So Leta will be trying to work out now, because he's starting to run out of minions, he's not running out of gas, how to weave in some sort of Battle Rage action here, I think. He's got 2 of them, so drawing 2 cards or possibly 3 cards would certainly not be a downside.
Right.
And I'm wondering if he wants to get the Bomb Wrangler out and maybe even shoot it.
It's tempting, right? You can get an extra draw that way. You can just kind of value bump into the Flame Imp, enrage your Bomb Wrangler, and then take the draw out that way. But that doesn't really deal with the Flame Imp problem. It's not perfectly clean in that you actually get the board clear as well as your massive card draw, which is generally what you're trying to achieve in that situation. It might just be too good to pass up, though. Yep.
He's going to have a go at it, because it's so many cards. The board outside of Unleash range is just hard to deal with. And if your opponent does unleash it and deal with it, then you should have a load more stuff to come up the next turn. And if he doesn't deal with it, you win the game.
Tough spot for Bunny. I'm struggling to see a better solution than the Faceless Corruptor. Yeah, Bunny seems to agree.
Yeah, and you say solution as if it's over.
Well, he's solved the equation
patch-up.
of what he wanted to do this turn.
Okay, yeah, it's more of a band-aid than a solution, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
More cards potentially on the way here for Leta.
Don't think this game is shut out, though, until we start seeing risky skippers and armor smiths and the like come into hand from Leta, because he is still just vulnerable straight down the middle right now. If Bunny can find a way to start pushing some direct damage, Leta doesn't really have a huge amount of counterplay to that just yet, but he does have Ankar in hand now to find skipper. He does still have Battle Rage to keep generating closer to that armor smith.
How about Rampage, Bloodsworn, Face?
So if you want to do that, you probably start with the bomb trade to see if that can solve your problems for you, right?
Yeah, I think so. You definitely want to do that. But yeah, like you say, getting the bomb would make it nice and easy. You've got a 1 in 4 chance, I believe, of killing the Faceless from there.
No. So is he going to trade one instead then? And then just keep the bomb in play? No, it is just all face. Okay. I respect it.
Yep. It's like, yes, sometimes you get me here, but I get you every other time.
Is it 7, 10, 12 coming back the other way right now?
There's a lot
King
coming
Crush.
back the other way.
King Crush would have been 15? So yeah, looks pretty comfortable, honestly. Don't see any real reason to trade in that scenario. Leta feels like he is the aggressor, and I think he's pretty accurate in that assessment.
I think so too, although I'm not sure where he's going to find 5 from if Bunny decides to race him. He hasn't got the Armor Smith to back up this almost bluff. Yeah, he's nodding, like he was challenging Bunnyhoppor to trade, but because they're eggs, Bunnyhoppor has no incentive to trade.
Right, that's the problem. Why would he trade, right? You trade into Can? No.
Right, I think Leta's a little bit annoyed at himself because he's realised, sort of at the same speed as me, why that is not going to work. Plenty of outs, though.
That'll do it!
Just gets there.
Korkron plus the Ankar. Korkron comes flying off the top, and that is going to be a quick as you like 2-0 for Leta. I have some questions about whether that was the correct line there towards the end without any of that insurance that we were talking about. No Armor Smith, no reliable source of 2-turn lethal in hand without drawing it off the top that turn. And as you said, it really was a fairly easy bluff for Bunny to call based on the actual minions that were involved. And I must admit, my instincts said that, if you were going to ship the bomb face, then you were probably going to trade one of the eggs in that scenario. But, in the real world, in being results oriented, in this sample size of 1, his play won the game because the Korkron off the top ended up being lethal immediately and shutting out any of the nonsense that Hunter could have started throwing back the other way. So who knows?
Actually, the more I think about it, the more the bomb should probably go into the minion anyway, because if you're on a 1-turn clock, you might as well either kill the minion with a bomb to the minion or just hit 4 face with a bomb, which is also actually better.
That's a good point.
So maybe the bomb should just go into the minion there, whatever. But either way, he did get it done, and he's up with now the deck of the tournament, the Hunter.
Yes, the Hunter indeed. And just looking at his particular build of the deck, it is very, very slim down. No additional... Actually, sorry, the bottom of his deck is actually cut off on what I'm looking at. I was going to say, this is an extremely slim down list. But, no, he does have the version that we're used to seeing, as well as a Boom Pistol Bully being thrown in there as well, which, considering Rogue is one of the matchups that he has left to compete with from Bunnyhoppor's side, might actually end up being extremely impactful.
Just to clarify, the version we are used to seeing has Alex Straza and the Grand Slam?
Begin.
Yes.
Because I also have it cut off at the bottom of my screen, so I thought I'd clarify for my benefit as well as the viewers. Bunny with the start. Pretty much. Stunner and any secret part of the reason you play this deck. I feel that it's just such a strong combo against Hunter in particular. Obviously, bouncing things is always strong for Rogue, but because of the fairly linear nature of Hunter, it's that much stronger because you can predict when to play it out.
I take it back, Neil. Sorry, I fell silent there because I was verifying. The list does, in fact, just top out at Tiamat. There is nothing above that. Dynotoma brand Tiamat is the top end of the deck. There is 30 cards in this image.
Interesting. So let's just find what he's got instead. I assume just some...
Well, the Boom Pistol Bully, for one, is certainly an additional card that we're not really used to seeing. But yeah, I'd go back to my original assessment. It's a very slimmed-down version of the deck, which should make him extremely fast, extremely consistent. But that is 50% of his top end now being offered off of his opening tracking.
Yeah, so now it's a bit awkward because parting with Scavenger's Ingenuity is annoying, but parting with Dynotoma Brand might be fatal.
Yeah.
Job done.
So, kind of forced upon him, and he's got no early start at all here, and Bunnyhoppor's basically got all the things he wants. He may have to actually stall just to be able to do something, because Leta's not going to do anything to allow him to react to. Or is he?
Very, very interesting. I do kind of respect the Dynotoma pick there because, as I said, that is a large majority of the top end of the deck that he in the way that he's built this, and that means that choice is twofold, right? Firstly, you want to have the security of actually having one of your heavy hitters for the late game. Secondly, you can also trust your deck to give you things to do. Drawing a 1 or 2 drop off the top there was quite likely because of how slimmed down his version of the deck was. So.
Yeah, I'm not going to count, but I am going to count because that's what I'm like. I think it's 11 cards that are 1 or 2 mana there. Yeah, it was 11. So, yeah, pretty good chance of picking things up.
Zephyrus being the one drawn, he does turn down. I think if his curve was even more miserable than the one that we've seen so far, then he would have played Zephyrus for Animal Companion, but he just already has an Animal Companion in his hand, so choosing to hold on to it for a rainy day.
Saw Bunny looking across at the other monitor there, which is almost always a sign people are looking at their perfectly legal deck tracker.
Yep.
Because he knows, he hasn't accounted for Zephyrus maybe, but he knows what isn't in Leta's hand. And because it's so slimmed down, he's got a really good idea what is in Leta's hand because of that.
And that is a very clutch Hoffer roll. Playing around the backstab, playing around the Seal Fate. Taking the value trade on the Evil Miscreant, preventing any Evolve Lackey shenanigans, Titanic Lackey shenanigans.
Yeah, that all you're saying there's a good chance it's going to go face for 4 next turn as well as the removal.
Yeah, either that or it just deals the 4 anyway with Bunny daggering into it this turn.
Yeah. So you're pretty much perfect. That's all you want from your Huffer really in life is a trade and a 4.
Yeah, it's rare that a Huffer picks up a value trade on turn 3 and then I'm sat here talking about how strong it was, but that is absolutely the case in that scenario.
And at some point Bunny's hand is going to go completely nutty, of course. You can see he has all of the secret synergy ready to go. But it is allowing Leta at least a chance to play some Hearthstone, which looked like it might not even happen. But how long for now?
Well, how long does he need is a big question as well, because, you know, Leta might already be counting and say, okay, if this Zigzor gets in for 2, I've got, you know, Kill Command for 5, I've got a couple of Hero Powers for 2 more, that's 9, my opponent's now at 15, I then have a Dino Tamer Brand, that's 8 more, my opponent's at 7. Suddenly I'm only 1 more Hero Power away from Zephyrus Fireball being lethal, which would line all up on turn 8, so Leta might already just be thinking pure Face Hunter in the scenario that he's in and with the state of the hand that he has.
Yeah, if he picks up a dragon next turn, he's going to be wondering where to put this Scale Rider as well. Board state depending, obviously.
Yep, didn't even factor that in.
Don't let the door hit you.
And Bunny reacting to what you were just saying about how Leta sees his hand. Bunny's also aware that, hang on, he's done nothing for these turns. Bran must be there. It's not must be, but there's a strong chance that this is the damage-dealing hand later on.
Right. Yeah, Bunny was never likely to put up with that for too much longer. Talked a lot about how Blackjack Stunners are not just, you know, used in the same way that Saps are, for example, where you generally use them on mid-range and late-game threats, where you can tempo swing against them. But Blackjack Stunner is much more often used in the early game than Sap is, because it actually puts the body into play as well, and you can use it to take control of early game situations against other aggro decks.
Yeah, it's healed for so much damage if you count the fact that it was a good target for the Titanic as well.
Right.
And now, because he can hide the Hanar behind it, all nonsense is going to break out on the field.
And now, quite to the contrast of having the luxury of being able to think purely in face damage, Leta might now have no other option than to think purely in face damage, because it's hard to imagine him winning the board back from this position with Highlander Hunter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so many things now that you can lose to. You just, yeah, that makes sense to me. You have to kill Bunnyhoppor before he gets the cards you hope he hasn't got, and as it happens, some of those cards he already has got, like Seal Fate and Galakron. So.
Choose soon.
I was going to say he might not be long for this game, but he's playing against Bunnyhoppor, who's playing a deck that teaches you to death. So it might be a while yet.
Yeah. There are some draws that can help him climb back into this board state, but job number 1, he's going to deal with that Hanar, because if he doesn't get that problem solved, he's going to be fighting uphill for the rest of the game. Faceless Corruptor is one of those draws, but far less impactful when there's no Desert Spear to pair with it.
He's got to seriously consider just playing it anyway.
Into
which I hate.
Unknown Rogue plus Paladin secret combo? What are the chances of that actually working?
Okay, find me a better play. I mean, I agree.
Zephyrus Shadow Madness is kind of obnoxious, because it still doesn't deal with the Hanar.
Your Scale Rider's not active?
Yeah.
Easy. Not easy.
It's just, yeah, I mean, like, I was frantically searching for an answer to your question, but you're absolutely right. There really wasn't anything better, but just goes to show how bad of a spot Leta was in there, because even if that did all work out as planned, he still didn't do the thing he needed to do that turn, which is kill the Hanar. So, like, it was best case scenario, still not good enough.
Yeah, just got rid of a 1/4 taunt and didn't even finish it off properly. It's still there as a 1/1. But did remove the taunt, which is the key part of it, at least.
Yeah, having the taunt removed does at least give him some slightly better options with his rush minions and with Zephyrus on the following turn, but like I said, I still think he is in an absolute world of pain right now. Oh, the taunt's back.
Well, Faceless, you were rubbish. You should cost less mana and be bigger.
Choose suit.
Bunnyhoppor in his favourite spot with worlds and worlds of options. Maybe it's because he's got permanent lights on as opposed to lights off. You wouldn't think that this, like, cut down low mana build of Hunter could get in such a pickle so quickly, would you?
I mean, if you build your deck like this and then you miss your 1 and 2 drop, it's probably going to happen, right? Like, that's why you build the deck the way you do, so that you do consistently hit that 1 and 2 drop. And Leta just missed it this game in a matchup that, you know, he's already pretty unfavored in, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah. But not only has he missed it, he hasn't even picked up, like the turn where he had to play the Faceless, he hasn't even picked up, like, a Battle Mage to just fill the gap in mana.
Yeah.
You know, the advantage of building your deck this way is that on turns 7, 6, 5, you tend to have some filler that helps you pad out your board a little bit, but he hasn't even been able to use that.
Yep, he's literally drawn his entire top end. Dynatoma, Brand, Tiamat, Varanus is the 3 most expensive cards in his build of the deck.
So, to have any sort of hope, I think he needs a top deck Bully, and even that's probably not enough.
Yeah, that's the problem, is that you kind of want to get ahead before you start jamming Bully, because if you're behind, great, you get maybe 1 turn off, but they just trade their minions into it and no harm done.
Mm-hmm.
He's really struggling in this spot.
Maybe he should play 2 Bullies and just make sure he always draws one early.
That's the kind of quick thinking we need around here.
Yeah. Or he could just ban Rogue. Obviously that's not the case though, he's still got 2 more games to go with this Hunter, assuming he loses this at some point in the next few moments. Because it doesn't even feel like a free roll of a game at the moment, it feels like this is just lost and he's waiting for the next one. And the look on his face kind of says that as well.
Guide you.
Okay.
Mm.
If ever we needed something to make this game interesting,
It's your opponent's cards.
Lorewalker Cho has obliged.
That's made it interesting.
It really has. Suddenly, no flick in hand for Bunnyhoppor.
Yeah, I tend to just write off Zixor Prime in this because they've always got flick. So, plus his top end is 7. How's he allowed an 8 drop?
Not a mini fridge to be seen.
I hear that too, by the way.
Do you?
I actually hear mini fish, which makes no sense. So when Raven said mini fridge, I actually agree with him.
Interesting.
I hear an F in there, and there is no F there at all.
Wow. Out of nowhere, the one draw Zixor Prime off the top, and suddenly Leta is back in with a chance, because I was about, just before that draw was getting made, I was about to lead to the point that I think Leta's game plan here is that he's just trying to stall for as long as he can, wait until he gets a guaranteed board wipe with his Zephyrus, and then try and reset with huge minions and push damage. But he's managed to skip an entire step with that Zixor Prime draw off the top. He now has done the same thing, but tempo swung in the same turn, and also preserved his Zephyrus for additional clear, for additional damage, for lethal setups in the future.
Yeah, and the change in his body language has gone from, well, I've lost this game to, oh my goodness, I might be going to the final. I've seen this in players many, many times when they suddenly dawns on them, usually about this sort of spot where they might go to the final. And this is dangerous for these players. It's not a good time to start thinking ahead. More than 2 or 3 turns, that is. Remember as well, he could have played the Zephyrs on turn 2 and elect not to.
Yep, absolutely.
Well,
now then.
Wise man once taught me that you want Boom Pistol Bully when you're in front.
Yes, indeed. There are some potentially attractive-looking Varanus Zephyrus combos here, though. I think the problem you run into, though, is from Bunny's perspective. Sorry, from Leta's perspective, the Mystery Hunter secret that's in play right now.
Mm-hmm.
So he's going to just go with the Shadow Flame option instead. But he did have options for things like Varanus Zephyrus Whirlwind, for example, which, you know, developed extra power, but it would also then deal this 1 extra point of damage to all the minions he currently has in play right now, which would be a significant problem if that was Explosive Trap, as it ended up being.
I mean, Bunny's... Is he down to, like, hunting for fans of knives and things here?
Fans of knives. To all you fans of knives out there, have we got a treat for you?
Like,
So many options.
he's got to deal with this board and more, because look at this hand now.
Yep.
Just dealing with the board isn't enough.
Insane. I had absolutely ruled Leta out of this game, and then Zixor Prime died. Zixor died, and then the Prime came flying off the top immediately and just changed everything.
Yeah, and he has, reminder, he had no other big stuff, because this is how he's built his deck to be, in theory, more efficient. And who are we to argue what we've seen here? It wasn't efficient at all, but it still might get it done. When Buddy does this, you always think he's got some greater purpose. I assume he's going to taunt up a gigantic-sized
That's exactly what he's going to do. 12-12 Edwin Van Cleef, but it's not like it's dominating the board. It's dead to what he can see right now.
Secret is misdirection, though, right?
Yes, it is.
And this is where Leta would get this right so easily most of the time, but as long as he's not thinking about reaching the final.
Yes. Knows it's not snipe. Knows it's not freezing trap. Plays around misdirection by playing the additional target for it to trade into. Oh, no, 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 no! Disaster for Leta.
That's unbelievable. It's so infuriating when you play around something and it still goes wrong.
Yeah.
But Leta needs to bear in mind that not only is he still in this game, but he's 2-0 ahead. Like, less of the panic.
Oh, no, more of the panic. More of the panic, Lorinda. This situation requires all of the panic. That is questing adventurer, secret sap your guy.
Yeah. He'll be fine.
Look at Leta. Can't even look right now.
Yeah, that's sort of what I'm saying, though. He's 2-0 up. This isn't like he's had his dreams snatched from him. If he gets reverse swept, then yes, he has, but there's a lot of Hearthstone to be played between now and anything that could happen.
I genuinely don't know if he knows what the board state is. I don't think he did. I think he genuinely was not looking at the screen. I think he's only just learned what the board state is.
That's not necessarily the worst way to play against the speed that Bunnyhoppor plays sometimes. I'm assuming that Bunnyhoppor has countered that he's got lethal next turn, but I'm not sure he has.
Why are you assuming that?
Because he took so long, which obviously isn't the best read.
What does that mean? It's Bunnyhoppor.
Varanus Unleashed is available.
It is. Worth noting that Bran Unleash is available as well, which can sometimes represent more damage than the hero power, but does not in this case.
Boom Pistol Unleash, hit you in the face, close my eyes, I hope I don't lose, is also available.
Yeah. I think the most obvious solution is the best one in this scenario, though. That's just the Tiamat. Weave in these hero powers while you can, and now your opponent is down to that magical number of 10. Oh! Shield of Galacrond off the top. Oh.
Leta might as well have the words, please don't have it, printed on his forehead at this point. Like, just wants to get it over with.
Oh, sure. Why not? Another one.
Another one. 1 in 13 all over again.
I will act as your scale threshold.
From nothing but power.
Really curious as to where Bunnyhoppor ends up with this turn, because he might feel like he needs the extra health on his existing taunt minion. He might feel like he needs a second smaller taunt minion. He might feel like, as silly as it sounds, that sapping the Tiamat is necessary as well, even though it'll just come straight back and murder his taunt. Yeah.
Right.
Don't let the door hit you.
Managed to avoid another round of lethals. And advance his own ball state once again. Obviously there is still this Varanus Unleashed, which looks quite appealing.
Oh, Stormhammer now as well.
So now all you have to do is not die and clear the way. Guess that's all he had to do before.
The damage is largely exhausted now from Bunnyhopper's side as well, with Leta having ploughed through the both charges of the claw, absorbed both of those. Damage is few and far between, apart from what you're going to be seeing with the minions on board. It's only really shoot lackeys coming out from the hero power that are really going to be added on top of this.
And the world's biggest backstab should make no difference. But it's easy for us to say because we can see the hand.
You'll find me wherever the action.
And we're not playing the biggest game of Hearthstone of our lives.
Really? Dino Trader Bran summons King Rush to allow the Stormhammer weapon to go face.
Okay.
Instead of preserving it the other way around. Varanus Unleash would have allowed him to go through, whereas this way he gets to use Varanus Unleash and then push down. So if there's another taunt minion coming down this way, maybe this... If there's another Titanic Lackey this turn, maybe this pushes more damage over the course of 2 turns, doing it this way around. Very curious about this.
It also just puts him in a range where his hero power's starting to have effects. Does it give him an out? Has he got kill command still to come?
He's used Kill Command already.
That's what I thought. So...
Yeah. He's used
Dragon
Kill Command,
Bane?
he's used Zephyrus. I don't think he's used Corrosive Breath, maybe?
Right, and Dragonbane.
Sure.
So he's giving himself some extra outs. I'm not sure it's the right way to do it personally, but the reasoning makes sense.
I've been alerted by Derek in our little Discord green room as well that Bunnyhoppor actually missed an attack with the Blackjack Stunner before he Shadow Steps it that turn, as he was roping and probably didn't have time to get all his animations through. So that one damage could actually end up being super relevant.
Yeah, very much so. But now, Varanus Unleash still doesn't get there, does it? Yes, it does.
Varanus Unleash the Hounds for 4 dogs, but only 3 of them get to go face. One of them has to trade through the taunt.
To say Leta is under a bit of pressure would be an understatement.
Yeah, right, yeah, exactly.
Winds of the south, come to my aid.
He's continuing to milk this as much as he can, and honestly, the more I look at it, the more I realize his sequencing of options here has been about denying the dirty tricks more than anything. I think that's why we've been seeing the minions go through the taunts on the other side to allow the weapon damage to go through. He doesn't want to use that Unleash the Hounds until it's lethal, because he knows that Unleash the Hounds is going to gift the damage over to his opponent with the dirty tricks coming off the top.
And that could lead to a Kronks, right?
What is it? That is Kronks off the top for Bunnyhoppor! And this series is going to continue. This swung back and forth like a seesaw, Neil. It looked unlosable for Bunnyhoppor. Then suddenly one Zigsaw Prime draw, and it looked like Leta was miles ahead. But then completely out of nowhere, Titanic Lackeys, Blackjack Stunners, and Shadow Steps as far as the eye can see, and Bunnyhoppor somehow managed to scramble his way out of that game. And I do mean scramble, because that was by no means peak Bunnyhoppor towards the end of that game.
No, I mean, missing an attack is something that he does not do. That's one of the selling points for Bunnyhoppor, is he orders everything in the right way, he gets everything done. Just traditional German efficiency, just gets it all in the right order.
Unbelievable game of Hearthstone, Narinder. And now we do have to go again. And honestly, who is in the better mental state going into this? Because I think, Bunny obviously tired. We saw he looked tired in the last series. Even asking if he had time to take a nap in between series, apparently. But Leta was perhaps the one more visibly going through the emotional roller coaster during that series. So, who are you hanging your hat on here now?
So I think the leading question goes towards Bunnyhoppor there, but I'm not going to go with that. I think Leta, you pointed out at the end there, he was trying to avoid the dirty tricks being triggered. And he got the confirmation that that was correct when the Kronks was drawn. He lost the game, but he knows the Kronks would have come off if he had triggered the dirty tricks, and he would have lost anyway. So he can back himself up by saying, I'm doing this right. Whether he is or not, I'm not even going to get into. But the reason he was playing that way is to avoid that happening. And if you can back yourself, it means a lot when you're very, very nervous.
Well, nervous, I'm sure he will be, but now it's going to move on to a Hunter Mirror. And he has Coin Felmore. Did also choose to throw away the Guardian Org Merchant.
Mm-hmm. That's because he has the Felmore, as presumably.
Yeah, wants to find a coin 2-into-2 curve wherever possible, I would imagine here.
Or at least a Battle Mage or something, if he goes coin 2 into Battle Mage or something rather than an Org Merchant.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, 2-into-2 would be lovely. Good chance of finding it, and Bunnyhoppor really needs to throw this lot away. We are seeing people be incredibly greedy with their Hunter mulligans. Yep, that'll do.
The fires of vengeance burn bright.
Leta gets the bad news that the 1-drop on 1 from the player going first in the tempo matchup is always going to spell potential disaster.
Yeah, and the Felmore he kept may never get played in this game. It might just be too slow. Like, is there a way he can make time to play it next turn into a Fairy Dragon? It just doesn't feel like it.
It doesn't. I'd be inclined to agree with you. I don't know how much of that is influenced by the fact that I can also then see the Zigsaw follow-up as well.
But also, Bunnyhoppor may choose to play his own Felmore, in which case Leta does get the chance to actually go for that, which he now can do.
Yes. Bunnyhoppor considering the value bump, which he is going to take. I was just about to say I don't think you take it, because I think you are very happy if your opponent spends his turn 2 hero powering there. By making the value bump, this is the play that you open up. Your opponent just be like, okay, great, we traded 1-drops and we've matched 2-drops. Like, I'm back in this all of a sudden.
How narrow a range was that card that Leta kept there? After turn 1, when he plays the Sharpshooter?
I'd say 4 or 5 options, maybe.
Okay. That's big enough to to not be conclusive, obviously.
Yeah.
That's what not being one means in that situation.
And now suddenly, a Misha here.
There it
Oh! Now, depending on this Felmore attack... Sorry. Nothing
mystery.
depends on the Felmore attack because it was obviously going to go face. But now, Leta finds himself in charge of this board state and still with the coin in hand.
Trying to work out what Bunnyhoppor's play is here that maybe helps his opponent's Felmore go where Bunny wants it.
It's going
The plays
face.
Yeah.
That's where it's going.
The 50-50 thing is debunked, by the way, just in case anybody still believes that. It does have an equal chance of hitting each target.
Yes.
It was a really good conspiracy theory, though. I'm impressed with that one. Come up with more like that, please.
Yeah. Give Lorinda more work to do in his free time.
Yeah, thanks.
Moves quickly.
Oh, his turn is just ugly, whichever way you slice it.
I
I
think
hate it and I want it to go away.
This is the only play that has any logic behind it. It's still grim.
Yep.
And Leta's going to get into control here. Oh, it's broken.
I think that might actually have been better.
Mm-hmm. I agree entirely. Because now
was
he can
just-
develop quite happily.
Exactly. I was just about to make that point that for once, maybe just trading options here is better because otherwise, obviously you don't get to attack again with the Felmore on your turn, so it's not like you can take the trade, and then you really potentially want to play Dragonbane this turn, which means you'd be playing a 3-5 into a 5-4 that was left on board. That option just gets completely shut down. Now with the trade happening, Leta's completely free to do whatever he wants, be it Dragonbane, be it Coin Boom Pistol Bully. All of these options were shut down by the 5-4 still being in play.
Yep, so he got the role he wanted / deserved. Shuts down Whelp and a few other bits and pieces here. There's not that many battle cries, right, in this deck?
Rotnest Drake is the huge one that you want to play around, though, in this scenario. Because that's the blowout. Give yourself a turn or two to actually establish board and pull ahead, and then if they do have the Rotnest Drake, it's going to be much less effective next turn than it was this turn.
I wonder.
I want them to change tracking. I've decided over the course of the last 2 or 3 games, I want them to reveal the cards that you've been.
Okay,
Just to add a little bit of extra intrigue into the game.
fair enough.
Because this is relevant here.
It is hugely relevant. Hugely painful for Bunny as well, as he tracks into 3 Battlecry minions, really kind of looking for something to do that was efficient this turn.
Moves quickly.
And losing one of his Highlander minions is always not fun.
Yep.
You build a deck with these cards in mind and you have to throw one away. So you take the 12 mana one, what could go wrong?
So I think based on that play, you know your opponent now has a card that they just chose to track into, plus 2 cards that were probably either too expensive or affected by your Boom Pistol Bully on the last turn, just based on how horribly inefficient that play was from your opponent. So you're starting to
Should he have
develop some
traded
information.
You should.
What do you want to trade? 5-5
The
into
1-1?
1-1? No, get in the bin. I'm never
Sure.
making that trade.
I knew the answer you were going to give me. I thought I'd obliged by my job to ask you.
Yeah.
And this is one of those complicated turns I talk about.
It is much more so because the Corrosive Breath isn't active here. Much more so because there's no dragon to continue to squeeze value out of this Stormhammer this turn. And
What's the Dragonbane options?
both of those problems are just caused by the same thing. Essentially what I'm saying is he'd really like a dragon this turn.
Yeah, he's got a Dragonbane.
Yes.
Maybe that's keeping the dragons away.
That is slightly awkward.
I'm just wondering if you Dragon Bane and press the button, and then just see what happens. Both outcomes look good.
Do they?
I think so.
Okay. I'm not quite so convinced. This is the line that I was looking at. Obviously, whatever you did, you were losing something, right? Like, you used the Corrosive Breath there, you miss out on it dealing face damage, but, you know, it is still a legal play to just use it as a removal spell, which is what Leta's done there to make sure that he maintains tempo. And you also know it's your opponent's potential Dino Tamer brand turn. And like I was saying, I think you developed a small read on the previous turn, that those 2 cards from the left, one of them was chosen from tracking, and the other one was either too expensive to be played or was a battle cry that couldn't be played under the Boom Pistol ability, which I think the combination of all of those things does make Dino Tamer brand fairly likely, incentivizing you to get the taunt in play. So all things considered, yeah, I like this line.
And it's worked because it's stopped Bunny from playing the brand, or it looks like it has.
Yeah.
Makes sense for him not to play it to me.
Quickly.
Is it though? I'm not sure whether that Zigzor Prime was guaranteed or not. If it was, then yeah, I'm probably on board. So diverting away from the Dino Tamer brand does seem to make some sense.
I don't think it was, but I might be wrong. I have been wrong once or twice before. Not enough.
Nope. Looks like another one is just starting to slip away from Leta here.
Oh my goodness. Two apiece, and the key is just not to get downhearted here. It's nice and easy for me to say from my cushy room talking about the game.
That is not it. That is going to square up that series. 2 games apiece now, and it's going to come all the way down to the wire. Only fitting for the way this series has been going out. Somewhat unbelievable that we've made it all the way to Game 5 here. This series has looked over at multiple points up until this point, but now game number 5 it is, and I believe it's going to be Hunter yet again trying not to get reverse swept on the most represented class in the entire tournament. Hunter on the side of Leta going up against the Quest Warlock on the side of Bunnyhoppor.
And I'm thinking that I'm in the minority. I prefer the Hunter in this matchup. I'm starting to see more and more people tell me I am wrong. I'm used to this. But I'm not moving yet. I still think the Hunter is slightly favoured at the moment.
Yeah, so I've gone a little bit the other way. I started out the Grandmasters season, at least when Quest Warlock appeared in Grandmasters, whichever week that was, 3 or 4 maybe, a little bit later on, thinking that Quest Warlock was favoured in this matchup, then dialed that back a little bit, and ladder stats as well as our testing amongst casters seem to show that it was ever so slightly Hunter favoured, but that's as far as I ever went, was ever so slightly Hunter favoured, and now, yes, there has been a topic of discussion on Twitter over the last 5 or 6 hours about how, in fact, the conception is incorrect and that Quest Warlock is actually favoured in the eyes of some players. So I think what you can take away from that fairly safely is that the matchup is close.
What I would say is that under circumstances where I'm nervous and tired and all sorts of other nasty things going on, I want to be the Hunter, even if it's 50-50. Even if you prove to me it's 50-50. I want the one that's slightly easier to play.
Sure, I can get behind that.
So at this time in the morning for both of these players...
That hand sucks. Plain and simple.
Wow. Which one, Sottle?
The Warlock one.
Job done.
And these hands sometimes change careers where you're struggling a bit mentally and you're thrown a bone and you just get on with the rest of your career quite happily afterwards. This could be absolutely amazing for Leta.
Yeah, and Leta has the dream curve here. Bunny needs a Dark Skies, or at the very least, a Nether Breath sooner rather than later here.
Don't mind getting 4 health when Dark Skies is there. Because if he doesn't have it now, it's never going to be used. Not never, but the 5/4 appears and makes your Dark Skies look like a joke.
Indeed. If there is an additional minion next turn and Bunny doesn't slice into the health, then Dark Skies, even as a top deck, will not be good enough. But that is something that you do consider as the Quest Warlock player. Sometimes, even in scenarios like this, you might just carve some health off of this board to at least give yourself the hope of top decking an out on the following turn. He's going to go Coin Crag instead.
Wow. And this is a major concession. It might look like it slows down the damage, and indeed it absolutely does, but now your plot twists become pretty awful.
Yeah, plot twist just got worse. Plot twist got worse, Crazed Netherwing got worse off the tops, Dark Skies got worse off the top, but yeah, the hand quality is so poor that I just don't think Bunny really had any other options. He just had to stop that damage coming through.
Leta trusting his deck, just swinging face. He saw the play that Bunnyhoppor just made. It just puts the hand face up.
Rain of Fire Coil can take a lot of this damage off the board. Does have the Questing Explorer to go along with that as well.
I wonder.
Would have loved a Moarg though.
Leta reasonably unlikely to whiff as well because of the build of this deck.
Yeah, it depends on how you want to define a whiff though, right? Because
Orc
drawing
Merchant, yeah.
Yeah, drawing Orc Merchant or Dwarven Sharpshooter could very easily be considered a whiff here. That's not a whiff.
That's like
That is fantastic.
Uh,
That was very quick. What were the other two options?
I didn't see them, hence the I was like, really? You're going that fast?
Okay.
He just wants it over with, which can end badly. Or can it?
Oh!
You okay, Sottle?
No, I'm not. This series is giving me an aneurysm.
It's been a really exciting series. I'm very invested, I must admit, at this point. In fact, the whole top 8 has been like this. In fact, the whole, from about round 6 onwards, has been like this. Bunny can't even tap or he's dead to what we can see. He can't play the Netherwing or he's dead to what we can see.
Yeah, but crucially, Bunny can't see any of that stuff.
But he can count and see how many things like a kill command there are in the deck. But it has to be a 3 damage, so Scale Rider, for instance, wouldn't be enough for a lethal.
So many possibilities.
This is the decision. This is the one the whole series hinges upon, and Bunnyhoppor, with a shrug of his shoulders, throws out the Crazed Netherwing, and with the biggest fist bump we've seen in quite some time, Leta stumbled at the final hurdle once, got up and tripped over again, but leaps over it on the 3rd occasion. Turn 6 lethal with the Highlander Hunter, and he is going to find his way all the way through to the final, Lorinda.
And I love Masters Tours for exactly what we just watched. We've watched mainly GMs in the top 8, a regular strong contender coming through and taking them on, having to absolutely pull out the stops and fight for his life there and squeak through. And I love those moments of emotion where it's like, okay, I have done it. I am in the final. He'll care what happens next, but like, this is the achievement now. It's a lot of money. It's a step towards Grandmaster. And also, I'm happy for his team who had Bunnyhoppor on their roster as long as they could hold Bunnyhoppor, who's a hot commodity to hold on to, but had the academy, and Leta was on that academy. And I'm really pleased for Morningstars for standing by him and just having an academy to bring up like this.
Yeah, absolutely. These are the stories that we want to see coming out of Masters Tours. As much as we will focus on the Tices and the Bunnyhoppors and how is Hunter Ace doing and, all of those things that people want to know about the names that they recognize, these are the players that these Masters Tours are kind of designed to give opportunity to. And when you have as consistent a record as Leta does, again, as Lorinda pointed out earlier, he's now in contention for being the 2nd highest wins player in over Masters Tour history. When you have that consistent a win rate, 6-3, 6-3, 6-3, over and over again throughout Masters tours, you want to see those players rewarded eventually by picking up a huge chunk of prize money. And I think Leta already, with about $20,000 to his name in total, is now in pretty prime position to be climbing up that European rankings, even though the European rankings are by far the hardest to climb in terms of prize money.
And I imagine that the Italians who had so much fun with Pinas last time out are there again supporting them. And Italy, they'll be getting out of bed now and tuning in and finding out they have another finalist, even if he does use French deck names. And so let's have a look at the bracket. Let's have a look how he got there and who he's going to be playing.
I still can't believe that worked. That's amazing. He named his decks in French just to trick the system so that he could find his way through Masters Tour Asia Pacific. And so far, it's actually working out for him. That's amazing. But what a final we do have on our hands now. Asia Pacific's best, arguably, going up against this new fresh face from the European region, looking to cement his place in the Hearthstone Grandmasters for Europe moving forward as well. Should be an incredible and fitting end to what has been an incredible top 8 and an incredible tournament.
He's going to take down a Grandmaster from each region if he wins this. Just casually take down, say, Bunnyhoppor and Alutimu. If you want to be a Grandmaster, no better way to do it than just beat them all, and then there's no argument about which region you came from.
That is a fantastic shout. What a story that would be if he ends up taking the crown, having knocked off one Grandmaster from each region on his way there. Incredible story. I'm over the moon for the guy, not in the least because he's clearly over the moon himself. And, that kind of energy coming off the players is infectious. I love seeing the players that clearly care about what they're doing, that are invested in what they're doing. And Leta certainly is fun to watch on the camera, even though he clearly is not having fun at all times when things get as tense as that series was.
So we have seen him get to the final. He's knocked down 2 of the region's Grandmasters. Will he get it done against Alutimu, or will he fall at the final hurdle? We will find out in just a few moments.